Hi, welcome to the VCE PE Kings, a YouTube channel dedicated to helping you achieve the best results possible in VCE physical education. If you find this video helpful, please click on the subscribe button and the bell button so you are notified when new videos are released. Today's video is all about improving SAC and exam results, whereas many of the upcoming videos will be focused on specific concepts covered throughout the new VCE study design. Once again, thanks for tuning in, and I hope you find the video helpful. A little bit of background information before we start. Today's topics are not actually accessible in SACs or exams, but by following these simple steps, you'll definitely achieve greater results throughout all of your assessments. Just letting you know that I did not create these strategies, but have picked them up along the way, and I've been teaching VCE PE for about 8 years now, and have many of my students in the classes that I teach use them and have seen great improvements as a result of them implementing these strategies. These tips and strategies can be used in a range of assessments throughout all of your subjects as long as they include multiple choice and short answer questions. So please learn from this video, apply it to your PE lessons, but please then also apply them to your other subjects to make sure that you are achieving fantastic results throughout all of your studies. The first thing we're going to look at today is multiple choice technique. Now, I understand in the new study design, multiple choice, you probably don't see them until the end of your exam, but they are really important. So we do need to make sure that we are practicing these multiple choice techniques during revision sessions and the like. Otherwise, when we get to the exam, we're not going to know how to handle them properly. People often believe that multiple choice questions are easy marks, for the fact that you're given 4 answers, one of them's right. You just have to sort of try to remember what you've learned. And if you don't know, you can take a bit of a random guess. Now, if you do that, you've got a 25% chance of getting the answer correct, but we want to improve your odds here today. Traditionally in PE exams, there are 15 marks worth of multiple choice questions in the exam. Those 15 marks make up 12.5% of the total marks in the exam. So if you go well in this, it allows you to start very strongly, whereas if you struggle in these, you're losing a big chunk at the very start of your exam. Of the 15 marks that were available in last year's exam, and last year's exam obviously is slightly different because it's a new study design this year, but it is the latest data that we have, the average mark from those 15 possible answers was 10.58. So when you look at percentages, people were getting 71% in multiple choice answers. Now, that's pretty good, but obviously today we're going to try to give you some advice on how to improve that 71% and get yourself off to the greatest start possible in your VCE exam this year. My first tip that I have for you for multiple choice questions is making sure you use the reading time wisely. Okay, you're given time at the very start of your exam where you're not allowed to write anything. A lot of people just quickly read through the questions and then put it down and wait, and that's it. What I'd like you to do is obviously first, please read through all the questions. Use that time wisely, understand what questions are going to take you a bit longer, what ones are going to be nice and quick, and think about all that sort of stuff. But the other thing you need to do with the multiple choice questions is make sure that you have formulated answers in your head before writing time has started. That will mean that when you actually get to do the answers, you can go through the process we're going to talk about very quickly, and therefore get lots of results in a very short amount of time, which will leave you more time to do other things later in the exam. Once writing time begins, you should follow this process. First of all, you've already read it once, but reread the question again. It's vitally important that we understand what is being asked. And if we don't understand what is being asked, we will make silly mistakes and choose wrong answers. So make sure you reread the question again and fully comprehend what it is actually asking. Once you've done that, the next thing is to make sure that you consider each answer equally. A lot of people have a habit of reading the question and reading answer A and going, yep, that's it. Okay, and they'll circle A, but what they don't realize is there is a better answer later down in the other 3 options. So make sure you consider each answer equally. Once you've considered the answers equally, what I suggest you do is then cross out the ones that you know are wrong. What that will do is often you'll be able to eradicate 2 answers pretty quickly. Normally when they write exam questions and multiple choice questions, there are generally one that's really obviously wrong. You can get rid of that one very quickly. There's also an answer that once you have a quick think of it, it can't be right for obvious reasons when you read the question. So then often you are left with two answers. Now there's a couple of ways that we can go from there. The first one is that it will be really great if you can eradicate the third answer, and then happy days, you've got your answer and you can color in the right box, and you will have your answer there. But sometimes there are two answers that sound pretty good. And a lot of students do speak to me and ask, what do we do? Both of these answers are right. And sometimes they are like that, but what you have to do is you need to think about it critically, and you have to then make sure that you choose the most correct answer. The other third option that we have is we've narrowed it down to two, but we just have no idea and take an educated guess. Now, if we take an educated guess without going through this process, we've got a 25% chance of getting the correct answer. If we go through this process and we leave two, then we've got a 50-50 chance of getting it. And if it's an educated guess, hopefully we improve beyond that 50%. So we might be able to pick up an extra mark or two just by following this process. And as I said before, you need to make sure you choose the most appropriate answer. Sometimes there's two answers that sound pretty good, but one is generally always better than the other. As I mentioned before, if we are able to get this done quickly, it is to our advantage. The exam usually lasts for an hour and 20 minutes, 120 minutes, sorry, and it has 120 marks. So that means 1 minute per mark. So if you can get the multiple choice questions done in 10 minutes, that will leave you an extra 5 minutes extra later on for a harder question. So some of those short answer questions where you have to answer, you get 6 marks for, or it'll also give you another 5 minutes to proofread and check your work before the end of the exam. So using that time wisely is really important and will be a great advantage to you. So if you can get that done quickly, but efficiently and to a good quality, then you're able to use that time later on to your advantage. Just wanted to quickly show you how this technique works. So the following question that's about to appear came from the 2017 VCEE VCE PE examination. Now, as I mentioned before, new study design this year, I understand that, but a lot of the topics are still very similar or the same. So you can still use a lot of those old VCE exams to help you revise and practice these techniques and practice your knowledge in a range of different areas. For example, biomechanics is in this year, whereas in previous years it's been in year 11. So you won't see any biomechanics questions on the exams. And you will see questions about social ecological model, which used to be done in year 12, but is now done in year 11. So ask your PE teacher about that and they'll be able to point you in the right direction, but there's still heaps and heaps of questions that you can do from those old exams. So the question here, as I said, comes from last year's exam. It was question 9, and it said, field tests such as the 20-meter shuttle run are generally preferred over laboratory tests because they are more. Now we've got 4 options here. We've got valid, ethical, reliable, and accurate. So let's just quickly speak about this for a minute. Field tests are tests that are done outside of a laboratory situation where we've got lots of different variables that we cannot control. Whereas laboratory tests are done in a very controlled environment and often have very, very good results as far as accuracy is concerned. So if we have a look, we can already cross out D because accuracy in a laboratory test is always much better because there are less variables or the variables are controlled. We'll cross that out in a second. So let's have a quick look at this for a second. Are the tests more valid or valid? Well, we do know that valid means, is the test actually testing what we are intending to test as far as the components of fitness? So we do know that the beep test or the 20-meter shuttle run does actually test the aerobic capacity of an athlete. So yes, it's valid. We can leave that for the moment because that's an option, but we need to give each of them their time. So let's have a quick read over the others. B is ethical. So let's think about ethical for a minute. Ethical does talk about is something right or wrong, but we need to look in deeper about what ethical actually means. Now, if you think about it, laboratory tests cost a lot of money, okay? So therefore, we've got a laboratory test which could cost, for a VO2 max test, $200 to $300. and we've got a beep test that does something very similar that costs us nothing. Okay, and the whole idea of ethics there is that an athlete that can afford that extra money might have an advantage compared to someone that can't. So is doing a laboratory test always ethical? Maybe not, because some people can actually afford to do the test whilst other people can't. Okay, so we can leave B as well, because doing a field test is a lot more ethical because it puts everyone on an even playing field. Everyone can afford to do the beep test. All it takes is a tape, or actually you can get it on YouTube now, and some cones and someone to help watch, and you can do it. When we're talking about reliable, we're talking about, can the test be replicated accurately multiple times? Now, field tests are quite reliable, but when we're looking at laboratory tests are extremely reliable. So you are never going to say that a field test is more reliable. So we can actually get rid of that one. Okay. We spoke about before the answer to D, accuracy. Okay, laboratory tests, again, are more accurate because they can measure lots of things. They have expensive equipment that can measure things, whereas field tests are generally predictive tests. So we can get rid of that as well. So we've now got to the point where we have eliminated 2 of our responses, and we get to then choose which one. Now, as I said before, we could get rid of another one, but we know that both of those are pretty good. Okay, so now I need to think to myself, which one do I think is more likely to be the correct answer? Now, for argument's sake, today I am going to choose it's more valid. Okay, or it is valid. The reason why I chose this question is because it's actually a little bit of a weird question. Because in the examiner's report, this is the only multiple choice question that has 2 answers that were accepted to be correct. Okay, so we could have either chosen ethical or valid. But I just wanted to quickly show you the steps to go through. We got it down to 2, and then I made my choice on that. Even if I didn't know what the answer was, I've still eliminated 2 and given myself a 50-50 chance rather than a 25% chance. So if you want to see the explanation for why that could be either A or B, please go to the VCEE website for PE, look at the examiner's report for 2017, go to question 9, and it will give you the answer that you need. The next thing I'm going to talk about is QOFMA, and it sort of sounds stupid, but it's an acronym. It's an acronym, and again, I'm going to put it out there and say I did not come up with this. I actually went to an ACHPA conference a few years ago now, and I went into an outdoor ed expo, and there were 2 people there talking about QOFMA, and when I first heard about it, I thought, QOFMA, that sounds a bit silly. But when they broke it down and explained what it is and how they use it in class, it's something that stuck with me. And since that year, this is my 2nd year of applying this, and last year my results were greatly improved on the year before, and value added from the predicted score that my students got as a result of doing the GAT to what they actually got. There was a massive difference. So I know that QOFMA works. It might sound silly, it might be uncool to use, but I guarantee you, if you do it early on, it becomes a habit. You don't even have to write it down anymore, but you're looking at the questions and you're understanding what the questions are. And that's what QOFMA is all about, understanding, breaking down the questions and understanding what the questions are actually asking in order to be able to get full marks for every question that you answer. So Q stands for the questioning word. So you need to highlight the questioning word, or sometimes there's questioning words. Okay, so you know what it's asking. So we're looking at things like list, describe, compare, all those sorts of words. And later on, I will be putting up some resources that explain what each of those questioning words mean. So if you don't understand what the questioning word means, it's going to be very hard to actually give the information that you need to. Okay, if you were asked to list or you're asked to describe, if you don't know what those mean, you're not going to get your full marks, because obviously describing takes a lot more effort, a lot more explanation than just listing what it is. Okay, so find out the questioning word, make sure you sort of highlight it or underline it in your book to make sure that you completely understand what that means. The next one is the area of study. Now, at the end of the year, you're being tested over the whole entire year's worth of content. So if you can get your brain to actually file things and then retrieve them in a particular way, we're laughing. So looking at the area of study, you just need to go, okay, this is all about fitness tests, or this is all about biomechanics. Okay, if you can do that in your mind, it starts to get your mind in the right zone to start retrieving information about that particular topic. F is focus of the question. Okay, when we know what the focus is, we know what we have to base our answers on. So is it asking us to, list 4 fitness tests, or is it asking to describe a fitness test and the validity of a fitness test, or whatever it may be? We just need to know, what is that question focusing on, because if we don't address that focus in our answer, we're not going to get our marks. The next one, marks. In an exam, or in a SAC even, every question that you have will tell you how many marks that is worth. Now, it's really important to understand how many marks we have, because number one, it tells us how much detail do we need to write in. Okay, if it's worth 4 marks, you're not just going to write a 1-line answer, because there's no way you're going to get your full 4 marks out of that 1 line. So if it's worth 4 marks, you'll have to go, okay, I need a little bit more information. The other thing that will generally tell you how much it's expecting, by the way, is the amount of space they give you to write in. Okay, that's another thing where you need to sort of go, okay, with average writing, how much can I write about this? They're probably expecting about that amount. The last bit is the allocation of marks. Now, as I mentioned before, something might be worth 4 marks, but you need to earn those marks somehow. Okay, so it might say list and describe 2 fitness tests. Okay, so when you think about it, when we're talking about allocation of marks, you're going to get 2 marks for listing 2 different tests. You're then going to get a mark each for describing those tests. Okay, and that's how those marks are allocated. When we're looking at marks that are worth, questions that are worth 6 to 8 marks, some of those big questions, if we just write without a plan, we'll probably pick up most of them, but we'll always forget something. So in your head, if you can go, okay, this is worth this many marks, how do I make sure I do that? Okay, and make sure your answer contains what you know you need to do to get your full marks. Sounds pretty easy, but quite often teachers don't actually teach a strategy like this to actually break down the question. So if you can do this in your head, it'll take you 10 seconds per question, and it will mean that you've already got a bit of a plan formulated in your head. When you're writing essays, I know your English teachers are saying write plans or come up with some form of planning strategy to make sure that when you write the answer, it's going to contain everything that you need. Now, PE and all of your other subjects in short answer or even long answer questions are exactly the same. So come up with a bit of a plan. Even if you don't write it down, keep it in your head so you can follow that. So just over the page here, we've got a quick example of how to use QOFMA. So I've got a question here. I can't remember what year this exam was. I think I've got it on the slideshow in a minute. But it's question 7. It's worth 8 marks, but this is only 7A, so it's only worth 4 of the 8 marks because there's other questions that go along with question 7 that I've just cut out. So it says here, explain physiologically how regular aerobic training leads to an increase in an athlete's lactate inflection point. Now, hopefully you already know that lactate inflection point is where the lactate levels in the blood start to increase rapidly. Okay, it's a pretty clear indication that you are now using anaerobic means, so generally your anaerobic glycolysis system as a predominant provider of ATP resynthesis. So the questioning word is explain. When we're looking at explain, it means basically what it says. We need to explain what's happening. All right. Second one, area of study. We're talking about chronic adaptations. Now, if you've covered this already, that's great. If you haven't, chronic adaptations are the adaptations that happen within the body as a result of prolonged training practices. Okay, this one here, we're talking about aerobic training practices. So we're probably talking about continuous or fartlek training, something along those lines, long interval training. But it's the adaptations that are happening in our body to allow our aerobic system to become more efficient. The focus of the question, how does aerobic training impact lip, is basically when we break it down, that's what we're being asked. Now, it's worth 4 marks, and as I mentioned before, it does say 8, but if we look to the right-hand side there, 4 marks is what this section of the question is worth. And the way I've sort of broken it down, and there's no right or wrong way to do this, it's what you believe is going to happen. You get 2 marks for naming 2 chronic adaptations associated with prolonged aerobic training, and then 2 marks about explaining how those adaptations will actually lead to an increase in your lactate inflection points. Okay, so really quickly, you can do that in your head. If you practice it a couple of times. If you're about to start trying to do this, I'd actually say write it down first. Okay, do that for a couple of times and then try to just do it in your head, and it will become second nature. And we've just got a quick sample answer here. So aerobic training leads to an increase in mitochondrial size and number, and an increased capability to oxidize fat and carbohydrate, leading to an increase in lip. The body can therefore work aerobically at a higher intensity before production of lactate exceeds the removal abilities of the body. Okay, so that question there was a sample answer from the examiner's report. I would probably still want my students to add a little bit more to that, but we're going to talk about improving our written answers next. So, as I just said, we are trying to look at improving our written responses. And a tool, again, this was taken from the same PD I went to at that ACHPA conference, and it's called the Register Continuum. And this is something that in my class we do on a pretty regular basis. And it's something that once you've learnt it, you can apply it to every single answer that you write. And the whole idea is that it's a tool to critically reflect on your answers. And you can do this in SACs. You can do this in practice SACs and practice exams. Anything where you get the responses back, questions in class as well. If you get the answers back and you get spoken to about what marks you got and all that sort of stuff, you can use this. Now, it's really easy. The Register Continuum is a continuum, a sliding scale, and you can see on the page here on the very left-hand side, we have novice responses. Now, a novice response is a response from someone that doesn't know too much about this, okay? They use everyday language. It's very written in an informal manner. So by saying that, we're talking about that it's written the way that you might say it. It's limited in its clarity or detail. They're often quite short. They don't contain much detail. They're not very clearly written. Very hard to understand what they're actually trying to say. They're very basic and short responses, and they're very unstructured. Now, if you're thinking about listening to a person that's an absolute expert in their field, okay, it could be any field whatsoever. You might be into gaming and watch lots of YouTube gaming videos, whatever it is, but an expert in that field, when they talk, you know they know what they're talking about. Okay, so they use technical language, okay, technical structure of writing. Very formal in the way they've written. All their answers are informed, so not only are they answering the question, but they're probably showing off a little bit more knowledge as well. A little bit more than's needed sometimes, but it does make the person think, this person does know what they're talking about. They use specific jargon correctly, okay, so making sure that we do use the correct terminology rather than using other words to describe it. Offers greater insight, so goes into those answers really deep, okay? We've all heard those answers before where someone answers it and you're like, my 15-year-old or 10-year-old niece could answer that. But when we hear an expert speak, we know they know what they're talking about. And that's what you want to be able to do for the examiner. You want the examiner to know that you know exactly what you're saying and that you are 100% confident that your answer is correct. They often give specific examples. So talking about the topic, but then giving a great example as, showing that you not only know it, but you can put it into a practical example is gold. If you can do it, please do. And they make sure that they elaborate on the really important points. Okay, so just a bit of an understanding of the difference between a novice answer and an expert answer. A lot of us can probably understand what it is when it happens, but I just wanted to break it down quickly for you. Now, in this, I often tell my students that a novice answer is 0. An expert answer is 10. So that means if you're somewhere in the middle, you're a 5. Okay, and as we said, it's a sliding scale. So if I get students to do a practice question off an exam or something like that before, I often get them to self-evaluate it and get them to show me just with their hands, out of 10, where their answer is. I often also get people to swap answers and get them to read it and then give them a score out of 10 for that answer too, and write some feedback as to what they can do to improve that response. Excuse me. The other thing too is don't be afraid to rewrite it. Okay, someone may have only said that you got a 5 out of 10 on that sliding scale. rewrite it, take on their feedback, write it again, get a teacher to look at it, okay? Because as long as we keep on rewriting and keep on improving our responses, we start getting into better habits. So please make sure you put in the effort, rewrite a question if you're not happy with it, and try to see if you can improve that answer progressively, because it will stick with you. And when it comes to the crunch and you're in the exam, you'll be writing expert answers before you know it. So I just wanted to quickly show you how to use this in real life as well. And again, this question here is a question from last year's PE exam. And it's talking about interplay of energy systems, and it's talking about the last 3 minutes of Kobe Bryant's last NBA game. Now, if you know anything about Kobe Bryant, he did score 60 points in his last game. Unfortunately, he did miss a lot of shots to do it, but that's neither here nor there. But so you can read the question there really quickly. Okay, again, you could apply QAFMA here to fully understand what the question is. So you can pause the video in a second and do QAFMA on this question if you would like, just as a bit of practice. But I'm not going to talk about that now because the video is running long and I just want to get down to the points. So the first thing is we've got a novice response here. Okay, all energy systems contribute to ATP resynthesis. Now that's not too bad because we want to make sure that the examiner does know that all energy systems are contributing at all times, but there's a predominant energy system at any one time. So if you get an interplay of energy systems question, make sure you start it with a simple line about the fact that all energy systems are contributing at all times, but at any one particular time there is a predominant energy system. So during rest periods, his aerobic system will help restore some PC stores. That's correct, but not much detail. And due to the rest periods, Kobe can again use his ATP PC system for higher intensity movements. Now, there's nothing wrong with that answer. That will get you some marks, but it definitely won't get you the 6 marks that you're after. Okay, so that would be more of a novice thing. They're using from generic words. They're also haven't elaborated on things, and yeah, they know what they're talking about, but only scratching the surface. Right here, again, I've taken this from the examiner's report, but let's quickly read through it. During the passage of play, all energy systems are being used to assist with the phosphorylation. There we go, pretty fancy word, but just means adding a phosphate molecule back. During periods of rest, such as free throws, timeouts, and substitutions, there would be a short period where Kobe's highly developed aerobic system will assist with PC recovery. Depending on the period of time, but at least with timeouts, up to 70 to 80% of PC stores would be restored. Now, it's really important that you do know some time frames there as far as PC recovery rates. About 3 minutes is about 100% if we're talking about a passive recovery. So know some times there you're able to put them in like they have here, and it shows that really good depth of understanding. After these breaks, Kobe would use his ATP-CP system to explode to the basket and weave past players to score. For example, his driving layup. His anaerobic glycolysis system would increase its contribution when Kobe was exploding through the key on an attack to score baskets and run back on defense, particularly with high intensity repeated efforts. His aerobic system would overall be predominant through the period due to having played 42 minutes of total game time. Now, yes, it will take a couple minutes longer to write that expert response, but you can see there that one is a lot more. It still may not be 6 marks, but there's a lot more chance of getting 6 marks from that than from the novice response. So make sure that you are including figures, make sure you're including some knowledge, make sure you're really showing off your understanding of the topic, like in the expert response there. So almost finished, guys. So just quickly in summary, number 1, physically eliminate options for multiple choice to help you find the best answer. I guarantee you'll get a couple more marks, which will increase your percentage and therefore hopefully increase your overall study score. Remember, the exam is worth 50% of your grade. Use QAFMA to fully understand questions and gain an understanding of what it takes to get full marks. If you don't know what it takes to get full marks, you'll never achieve them. Use a register continuum often and rewrite your answers until they are at the perfect expert level. Just remember, practice makes perfect. Just like in sport, education's exactly the same. And last but not least, if you did like this video and found it helpful, please click on the subscribe button and the bell icon to receive updates when new videos are posted. Thank you very much. I hope you've enjoyed it. If you did enjoy it, please make a comment on the page below, and also let your friends know about this page because it can help them as well. Thank you very much. Have a great day.